go
Well,
there.
first of all, start with the optional content. Optional means opportunity, 100%. So just
I
like
love that.
Duke has, and they have a mandatory school supplemental, and then they have an optional school supplemental that you can choose to do. I tell my students all the time, if you're not going to do the optional content in the application, don't even apply. Right? If I have to make a tough decision as an admissions officer, I'm looking at every single thing. I have to make tough decisions. I have 43 spots left, and I have 220 highly qualified applicants, and they're all reading the same academically test scores, stellar letters of recommendation. How do I separate these amazing students that meet institutional priorities, right? I start to look for pieces of the puzzle, right? Who did the optional content, right? So, optional equals opportunity. Take it a step further. Get out of the high school mentality of doing the bare minimum that gets you by, right? This is a competition. And as a student athlete, we understand how to compete, right? Traditional students understand that if you most of you have competed in at least a science Olympiad or some sort of other academic competition, treat the application process the same way. I need to be willing to do any and everything to help myself stand out. So whether it's an optional resume, it's an optional letter of recommendation, whether that's taking advantage of the additional information section, providing context, about a grade or something that, maybe an outlier in your application. Admissions officers value this information. It really helps us make those tough decisions with all the information available, but it also helps set you apart as a very mature student who's doing their due diligence and treating the application process with utmost respect. There's nothing greater that you can do in the application than making an admissions officer, or I'll say an institution in general, make them feel like you prioritize their school. They know that you're applying to other schools. They're not crazy,
Right.
but when you make them feel like you have prioritized their application by doing the optional content, I can tell you right now, you will set yourself apart 100%.
That's a great tip for people. I think that carries over. That is who you're going to be at their institution. I work in the corporate space sometime as well. I'm told by leadership, I'm talking top leadership in a lot of these corporations, that incoming employees who are young often don't want to go the extra mile and do the extra thing. When you start building those habits as that high schooler, get out of that mentality of, this will do, and move into, I'm willing to go above and beyond. Just like you said earlier, Gabe, outwork them all.
Them all.
Right?
Them
If
all.
you're willing to do that, one, you stand out for this college admission process. Two, this is just who you're going to become. What you focus on becomes your reality. You'll be that person in college. And then when you go to get a job, you need those attributes. And if you don't have them, it's a problem in all kinds of spaces, not just the corporate space, but in all kinds of spaces. I really think that's something that hopefully people who are listening tune into, rewind, and listen to again. And parents, you need to be a part of this. You need to be telling them. I know sometimes they're rolling their eyes at us, but you need to do that. I'm wondering, Gabe, is there a tip or two that you could give parents who are listening to help their students in any capacity during this admission process?
Agreed. And, it's really about striking that balance, parents. We don't want you to helicopter the process because in admissions, we do value an independent student. So you standing over them, let's say, for example, if a student's meeting with me, I always tell parents, you decide to work with me for a reason. Let me guide them, but we need you to be the reinforcement behind closed doors, right? Making sure that you're still a part of the process, but that you're not doing the work for them, and some students, I'm not gonna say they've been given free passes in high school, but teachers are, very forgiving. Hey, you turn this in late. No, that's not acceptable. Late means denials, right? You really have to make sure that, as a parent, that you're involved, but you're not overly engaged in the process, because we do want to instill, that independence, but also these students need to learn how to own their own development. So they need to understand what that looks like, help them understand the magnitude of the decisions that they're making. And, I would say this experience is the teacher, right? So, as long as you're having those mature conversations with them, helping them understand, hey, guess what? These next, these next, 12 months or 36 months, depending on, when you start working, intently on your application process, can really shape, those next 40 years, right? So, it's really about just having that perspective. But as a parent, as long as you're, staying engaged with them, and like I said, not becoming a helicopter in the process,
Right. It's
you've
a
really
fine
done
line.
all that you can do.